Week 14 of the fantasy football season, and here's the top 15 quarterbacks. I'm ranking this week number 1, Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. So Josh Allen, he's the best quarterback in fantasy football this season in terms of points, and he does it all with Josh Allen. He's putting up tons of yards this season, second in the league in passing touchdowns, and even rushing the football. We know he's a threat. So this week in a big matchup with the Kansas City Chiefs, so I believe this will be a shootout. And Allen, in terms of putting up numbers and points, has had a good track record throughout his career versus Kansas City Chiefs team. Number 2, Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. So another masterful season for Jalen Hurts, running the football with double-digit touchdowns and doing that. Passing the football, he's got 17 on the year. And this week at the Dallas Cowboys, even though a few weeks ago Jalen Hurts had a big game, I think once again it don't matter the opponent. Last week, Geno Smith threw for a big game at this Cowboy team, and I think Jalen Hurts and this Eagle team are going to put up points, and it's going to be a big-time shootout. Number 3, Tua of the Miami Dolphins. Tua, another great season for him, and health has been the main issue, that he's been healthy all season and making plays. Him and Tyreek Hill, the most dangerous combination from quarterback to receiver, in my opinion, in pro football. So this week, a great matchup versus the Tennessee Titans, a defense that really can't stop anyone. We just saw Gardner Minshew go over 300 yards in last week's game for the Colts. I think Tua and this Dolphin team on Monday night has a huge ball game. Number 4, Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. So Patrick Mahomes this season, we really haven't seen that patented huge games week after week. He's getting anywhere from 18, 25 fantasy points most week is Mahomes. But this week in a matchup versus the Buffalo Bills, a team a lot of history with over the last few seasons and big playoff matchups, I think Mahomes and this Chief team, after a tough loss at the Green Bay Packers, turn things around, and they come out of the gate quickly throwing the football early and often. So I think Patrick Mahomes this week, one of the better games of the season he'll have, even though it could go the other way as well, because he don't really have much in that receiving core. Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce, obviously their main weapon, are the only two guys doing anything in the passing game. Valdez-Scantling, Tani, Sky Moore haven't done much. So this week in a matchup in a potential shootout versus Buffalo, definitely dropping down the rankings a little bit from the last few weeks is Mahomes. Number 5, Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. So the last month of the season, Dak Prescott is right up there as a top quarterback in fantasy football. The offense is coming to him pretty easy. Him and Mike McCarthy on the same page, and they're just getting the football to their playmakers. CeeDee Lamb, what a 5-6 week span it's been for him. Brandon Cooks finally involved in this offense, being the deep ball threat everyone figured he would be once they traded for him in the offseason. And Jake Ferguson making noise as well in the middle of the field and making plays at the tight end position. So this week in a matchup versus the Eagles, a team he had good success against in a tough loss a few weeks ago, was Dak Prescott. I think once again he goes out there and throws for a good game. Number 6, Lamar Jackson of the Baltimore Ravens. So Lamar, he's in the MVP conversation, no doubt about it this season. But in terms of fantasy football, there's some weeks he has that monster game, and then some weeks a pedestrian 14, 18 fantasy point day. So this week, coming off a bye, I think this Baltimore Raven offense is going to come out early and often, putting points on the board. We know Lamar Jackson, best running quarterback in pro football. A minimum 5-6 fantasy points weekly you get from him running the football. So this week, coming off a bye in a home game for Baltimore, and now with that first seed wide open for them to go and take it, he's definitely a quarterback that puts up numbers once again this week. Number 7, Brock Purdy of the San Francisco 49ers. So Purdy, week after week, he's going out there and he's making big plays and putting up numbers. I know he's been a product of the system for the most part in San Francisco, playing in that Kyle Shanahan offense and with great offensive weapons, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and obviously CMC doing it all out of the backfield. And this week in a good matchup versus Seahawks that just got shredded by Dak Prescott in that Cowboy offense. I think San Francisco, they've been on a roll ever since they had the bye week, winning 4 games in a row. And right now, Brock Purdy, he's locked in. And once again, with Deebo Samuel healthy and looking good as well, taking bubble screens to the house, I think Brock Purdy has a big game this week. Number 8, CJ Stroud of the Houston Texans. I know Tank Dell is out for the season. He went down in that game versus the Denver Broncos. But CJ Stroud still a quarterback where he's amongst the league leaders in yards this season. He's driving the football down the field. He's got a lot of poise, and he's extending plays as well with his legs. So Nico Collins last week had a monster game, 190 yards and a touch. He's the number 1 wide receiver now with Dell out for the season. And the CJ Stroud's the type of quarterback where it looks like he's been playing 5-10 seasons in the league, and he knows how to spread the football out. So this week, definitely a tougher matchup at the New York Jets that played well versus good quarterbacks this season. Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, they really didn't do much versus Jet defense. But CJ Stroud, we'll see if he's up for the test. And this week, I think he is, even without Tank Dell in this game. Number 9, Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions. So Goff, It's been a good season for him and the Detroit Lion team. But the only issue with Goff have been a problem for him over the last few weeks. But last week, this Lion team went into New Orleans, got off to the early 21-0 start. And then the Saints, they cut that game down to a 5-point game, losing. But anyway, Jared Goff, great weapons, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, two great players in the offense and passing. And now Jameson Williams starting to come along as well. And Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield. So this week in a potential shootout once again at the Bears. A game they won a few weeks ago, down 10 with 4 minutes left. Goff led this team back and won the game. So right now you could pass on Chicago, one of the worst defenses in the league. And when you got guys like St. Brown, like I said, and Laporta, a fantasy points, we'll get there. Number 10, Justin Herbert of the Los Angeles Chargers. So Justin Herbert's been struggling the last 2 weeks here after he was a top 5 scorer in fantasy points this season. So Herbert last week, I know, was a tough game. Rainy, brutal weather, cross-country trip for him and the Los Angeles Chargers, pulling out a 6-0 victory at the New England Patriots. But this week back home, indoor game, which obviously is always a plus, and a pretty good matchup versus the Denver Broncos. And we know this Charger team, if they want to keep their playoff hopes alive, they're going to have to win this ball game and pretty much win out. So right now, Herbert's been struggling the last 2 weeks. I think he gets back on track. Keenan Allen, no one in that secondary, even Surtain, if he plays in this game after getting banged up in last week, is going to stop him. And I think Herbert and this Charger team gets back to the basics, and Joshua Palmer possibly might return to the lineup as well, which is always a plus. Number 11, Justin Fields of the Chicago Bears. So Justin Fields getting that week off last week with the bye week definitely can help that thumb injury, because I think he returned a little bit earlier injury. And we saw a few weeks ago versus same Detroit team, he ran for over 100 yards. So this week, ball game in Soldier Field, home game for Fields and this bad team coming off a bye. Maybe he's refreshed. Maybe this offense is going to get things going once again. And right now, he's a quarterback with his legs that put up fantasy points, even if it's ugly or not. We saw the ugly from Fields in Week 12 at the Minnesota Vikings. He still went out there and competed, but obviously he didn't put up the fantasy points. But this week versus Detroit, a team he's had a decent track record versus, I think he puts it on the top 12 performance. Number 12, Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers. So Jordan Love and this Packer team, they've been throwing the football over the last month of the season, and they're getting good results. They've unleashed Jordan Love. He's making plays with his legs as well when he has to. He's got a strong arm, and he's got a good receiving core as well as Jordan Love, with a lot of good playmakers on this roster. Christian Watson starting to come around, even though we don't know 100% if he's going to play in this game. Romeo Doubs has been pretty decent, and Jalen Reed has emerged in his rookie season as well. So this week on Monday night, I think at the New York Giants, a young secondary, even though they have played better over the last few weeks, he could go out there and have another good performance. 13, Russell Wilson of the Denver Broncos. So Russell Wilson, believe it or not, it's one of his better statistical seasons in the last 2 or 3 seasons here in the Sean Payton offense. So Russell Wilson's finding ways to put points on the board. It's looked ugly at times, but he's finding ways to find the end zone. This Bronco team was 1-5, now 6-6 on the season. They got a matchup at a beatable secondary of the Los Angeles Chargers, one of the worst defenses in the league against the pass. And Russell Wilson's got a number 1 wideout in Courtland Sutton, having a monster year. Good running back in Javonte Williams, and he knows when to pick his spots, when he's got to run, and also the safe throws to his running backs in the backfield who can make plays happen, yards after catch, like Samaje Perine and McLaughlin. So this week in a pretty decent matchup at the Chargers, I think he has another decent game. 14, Baker Mayfield of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So Baker Mayfield in his first season with Tampa Bay, it's been a pretty solid one in terms of putting up points and being a competitive team. I know this team's free-falling over the last month and a half of the season after they got off to a good start and losing many games in a row, but him and Mike Evans have been on the same page all season. Evans already at 1,000 yards this season, and this week in a matchup versus division rival at the Atlanta Falcons, an indoor game, which is always a positive for any football player to put up fantasy points. I think Baker Mayfield, once again, is a good option, and the 15th and final quarterback I have ranked this week's Joshua Dobbs and the Minnesota Vikings. So Dobbs and this Viking team, after that ugly loss on Monday Night Football in Week 12, where Dobbs turned the football over 5 times in that game, I think he got back to the basics, learning the playbook a little more. Because just remember, Joshua Dobbs was thrown into the fire after getting traded to Minnesota, and then had 2 good games, and then that last one versus the Bears before the bye week didn't help. But now to get Justin Jefferson back in the lineup and more comfortable with the playbook in a bye week to just process everything, I think Joshua Dobbs could go out there and have a good game. And it's a good matchup at a middle-of-the-pack type of rated defense, and also an indoor game, which is a plus as well, obviously. So that's the top 15 quarterbacks I'm ranking for Week 14 of the fantasy football season.